Hello class and welcome to another lesson in JavaScript. In this lesson we want to look at the concept of JavaScript loops, and the objective of this lesson is to understand what is a loop and to be able to understand the syntax for writing different loops in JavaScript. And so let us get started by defining what is a loop. A loop is a block of code that executes or that runs multiple number of times. A real world example of a loop would be when you are looping through your video, or when you are playing your video or audio and you put it to repeat again after it finishes. So that the code behind that audio app is the loop. An example could also be you are printing the array elements. We said an array is a data type that stores a list of items. So in an array we could say we have 100 items and we want to print out those 100 items. Which is the best logic to use? So we are going to use the concept of loops. In JavaScript there are three types of loops. One is the for loop, the other one is the while loop, and the last one is the do while loop. So we are going to look at the syntax for writing each one of these, and in this video we are going to start with the for loop. So the for loop uses three optional expressions to create a loop within it. So we are going to use the keyword for, and then we are going to write expression 1, we are going to write expression 2, and we are going to write expression 3. And then within the loop body we are going to write the block of code that is going to be executed multiple times as long as the expression 2 is true. So without a further ado, let us get started. So I'm turning over to my Visual Studio Code, and what I'm going to do is to remove this code right here. And now I'm going to create a for loop. But what is this function? What is the for loop going to do? So I'm going to create a for loop that will print numbers from 1 to 100 inclusive. So how do we print a number, or how do we print a value on the screen? If we are not going to use for loop, then which means you're going to write multiple console statements, console.log 1, and then again console.log 2, and then again console.log 3, and so on and so on and so on until console.log 100. So with this format, your code is going to be too much of code lines, which does basically the same thing of logging a number on the screen, and you're going to have too buggy code, which is going to be very difficult. It is even tiresome for you to write. And to avoid this multiple console, the best approach to use is the loop, and you could write 1 or 2 lines of code that will help you to print numbers from 1 to 100. So I'm going to write a for loop that will loop or run multiple times to print all these digits between 1 and 100. How do we write a for loop? We use the keyword for, and then the parentheses, and within the parentheses we are going to have the first expression, because a for loop has 3 expressions. So the first expression is normally the initialization of a variable. So we're going to have I, a variable, we can call it num, equals to 0. So here we are initializing a variable called num, and we are assigning the value 0 to it. So the initial value stored in num is 0. And then we are going to say num less than or equals to 100. So here let us start from 1 because we want to print the numbers from 1 to 100 inclusive. So we are going to put a condition. The second statement is the condition, as you have seen. So this is the first condition which you have already written, expression 1. Expression 2 is the condition that will keep this for loop running. And then now we are going to add expression 3. So again, we're going to add expression 3 and say num plus plus. Plus plus means we are incrementing num by 1. So what we are going to do is now to write the code that will print the value. So we are going to say console.log num. So when we run this program of code, the first thing that is going to happen, the first thing that is happening is that we are initializing num to 1. And then second, we evaluate this expression to see if num is less than 100. And if it is true, this code within the curly braces will be executed. So we will print num and we will print 1. Then after executing this code, we go back to the last expression and increase num by 1. Now the new value of num becomes 2. Again we check the condition. Is num less than 100? Yes, the condition is true. Again we run this block of code, and then again after that we evaluate this expression and increase num by 1. Now the new value of num becomes 3. Again we check the condition. If it is true, we evaluate this expression, this code, and then we go back again to increasing num by 1. And now the new value of num becomes 4. Again we check the condition. 4 is still less than 100, and it is true. We run this code of block, and then again we increment 1 and we check the condition. So you can see in this code block there is some repetition of some circles. So we check the condition, run the expression, increase the value, check the condition, run the expression, increment the value, check the condition, run the expression, and increment the value. So this repetitive flow of this code is what we are calling a loop, and it will help you to print all the values from 1 to 100. So it will go this way until when the value of num is 100, it will check the condition. 100 is equals to 100, and that is true. It will evaluate this expression and print 100. Then it will increment 100 by 1, and now the new value of num becomes 101. So it will check the condition. 101 is not less than 100, and therefore the condition is false. And when the condition is false, the loop will stop executing, and therefore we will have the loop stops now running. So now let's save these changes and now run our program. So I'm going to type node, the file name, and press enter, and on your screen you can see the numbers have been printed right from 1 to 100. So that's how you can print using the for loop. This is a perfect example of using a loop. So if it was not without a loop, you can see with the help of the loop, we are just printing, we're just writing one console statement, and this console statement will be executed a multiple number of times until all the values execute. And that is a perfect example of a loop. But assuming now we change this condition and we say 100 greater than, the value num is greater than 100, and then we go here to num and we initialize it to 101. So this scenario will create an infinite loop which will run non-stop without stopping, because every other time this condition will always evaluate to true, and the loop will keep on running and running because we have initialized the num to 101, and now we are checking the condition. Is 101 greater than 100? Yes, it is true. Then if it is true, this condition is going to be executed, and we are going to increment num by 1. Now the new value of num becomes 102. Again, 102 is greater than 100. We are again going to evaluate this expression, and we are going to increment num by 1. And again, the new value of num becomes 103. So this code will forever be true, and there is no point where this loop will execute. So if we try to save these changes and run the program, you can see now the code on your console right down here. It continues, it keeps on printing new values and new values and going on and going on. So it can never stop until the memory of this computer is full, and it will crash your computer. So this kind of scenario is what you want to avoid, and this is what we are calling it the infinite loop. So to intervene with this program, you are going to press Ctrl C on your keyboard so that to have this program stop from running. Otherwise, it will continue until the memory of your computer is full, and it is going to crash your system. So that's all about the concept of the for loop. The objective was to understand what is a loop and to be able to write an example of a for loop. So as a part of your assignment, maybe you can go and try how to print the odd numbers, between 0 and 100. So you want you to loop through these numbers from 0 to 100 and only print the odd numbers. Otherwise, that's all about this class, and in our next video we take a look at the concept of the while loop. Thank you for joining the class, and see you in our next class.